So let's go ahead and start this meeting of the Parks and Public Works Committee with a call to order and roll call. City Clerk Dean, you'll make a note of everybody present. I'm sure we've got everybody here from the committee. And let's move on to agenda approval. How's it look?
Fabulous. So
I see.
I'd like to make a motion
Would you, what motion would you like to make?
that we approve the
Something to
agenda.
consider. You got any thoughts on that, Brian?
Sounds good.
Okay, we are approved. And that brings us to public comment. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment on anything on the agenda today or off? I don't care. Anything. I'm just looking at you. You're good? Okay, all right. Okay, then let's move on to approval of the minutes dated January 7th, 2025. Everybody okay with those?
Good to go.
Second, the good to roll.
All right, then they are officially good to go. And
Chair?
yeah.
Can I go back for a second?
Sure.
I would like to move the utility rate discussion ahead of splash pad. Let's get into the utility rate stuff as quick as we can.
So you said you wanted to move it, but you didn't move that
I
movement.
motioned, good for you. I motioned that we move the utility rate to top of the discussion section.
Second,
All right, it is moved. We're gonna pop the utility rate study up to item 2 and move agenda bill 2512 to 3. So then that brings,
No,
right?
No, move splash pad to 4. Agenda bill 003 becomes 3. We still need to do agenda bill.
You want to do agenda bill first?
Yeah.
You still want to do that? You
Yeah.
just want to switch the order of the discussion items?
Yep.
Understood. Okay. All right. Swap the discussion items 3 and 4 so that AB 25-003 is item number 3. Done. Now let's go ahead and move to agenda bill 25012, resolution selecting RH2 for on-call water and sewer services. Who's going to talk to us about that one?
Hi, good evening. Andrew Vining, Public Works Project Engineer. I'm going to be speaking on AB 2512, which is for a on-call services contract for the next 3 years to provide a variety of engineering services, support services to the water and sewer utility. There are a number of tasks in this contract. Some of them support review of new development proposals that come forward to the city, mainly larger ones. Other tasks are related to updating our models, utility models, and kicking off some of the water system CIP projects, which we'd like to begin making progress on. We've made a lot of progress on the sewer side, and we're looking to pivot into some of the water utility improvements. And I do have a very brief presentation, which get into some of the CIP projects we're looking to kick off.
And these are all CIP projects related to water in general,
and sewer.
water and sewer?
The CIP are nearly all water. There's one sewer. It's an overall utility main project, the SR2 202 bridge utilities. That's sewer, reclaimed, and water related.
Chair.
Hey.
I guess you were right and I was wrong. I really don't want to get into this conversation until I'm done with the rate. Which of these projects move forward, which ones don't? We need to have that discussion. That will have impact in regards to this. I'm not willing to commit 440,000, which will impact the rate study until I know what we're doing with that rate study. So we could approve this non-consent if we want to move forward, but until we settle on rate and we know that this is in the plan.
Do we want to know about these projects to see if these are projects that we want in the plan or want to push. Because that could also affect the rates
I would like to know that.
as well. Is that putting the horse before the cart?
Well, and
That's the right way to do it. Is it putting the cart before the horse?
there are other ways of doing it.
Would, what my question is, would this be edifying for our discussion about the rate study and how to potentially bring the rates
I think we
down?
ought to talk about all the projects, including the ones on this list, and determine whether we need them to go in the 25-26 biennial, or can they shift out? And then adjust this accordingly.
And
So I don't think that's an isolated discussion of just these projects. It's a discussion on the CIP.
Chair, Engineer Vining has some input.
Yeah, what did you want to
Just,
say about?
just one comment related to that. This is, none of this work is to begin the design, the execution of the CIP projects. It's an on-call contract to help us prioritize some of these projects and determine if they could be pushed out, which ones are the biggest priorities, and what really is involved in the full design. So there's a lot of evaluations and feasibility studies. I would just add that to
Agreed.
discussion.
But are you asking for budget in 26-27 or 25 and 26?
25 and
And
26.
will this be supported by utility rate?
Yes.
Then it is subject to review based on the utility rate review.
I'm still-
My opinion, you guys.
no, I hear what you're saying. I'd be very interested in your thoughts on my question. Is this going to be valuable information for us to know as we're
Yes.
making decisions about, but you're saying you don't want to look at these and then say, and then during our discussion, say, okay, what other projects are we talking about in the CIP that we
Yeah,
need to
let's have that CIP discussion. And yes, the same information would go to this and other projects. Let's decide which ones we need to do, and which ones we can shift out.
Okay, so you're
And then come
suggesting,
back to this, because that discussion will impact this.
so you're suggesting that we go to discussion point 3,
Right, let's go to utility rates.
as I suggested earlier.
I said you were
And you-
right, I was wrong.
All right,
Yes,
let's
yes,
do
dear.
that. Let's do that. Let's talk about all the stuff in the CIP that has to do with water.
I'll stand by. Thank you.
Is that cool with you? Not cool with you? That upsets you?
Well, I think it's the cart before the horse situation, so.
Which one's the cart before the horse? The way we're doing it now? Doing it his way? Yeah, sometimes
But that's, you're the majority.
he convinced me.
No, it's just if you say yes to this contract, you've approved almost $500,000 into the utility rate. Okay, I think we ought to have that discussion on the projects, what we really need to do further going on. And if it has impact to that, it should reduce this contract.
So wait, by listening to the agenda bill discussion that Mr. Vining was about to give, do we then have to make a decision, yes or no, to move forward?
Put forward. And it could be
One-
for more
That contract
discussion.
comes $440,000 based on certain projects moving forward
Agreed.
to be analyzed during the 2025-2026 biennium.
Okay. You know what? I'd rather listen to Dylan than you right now. So.
I would
let's-
too.
let's- Okay, all right, let's go. All right, Dylan, tell us about everything in water that's going on.
Everything.
And everything that would affect the rates that we pay for water. I want to know about all of it, all the projects.
There are many. Do you want me to, okay, yes, I can do that. Or would you like me to go into the presentation? Do you want to do any sort of check-ins, or how would you like me to go, that specifically jump right in, or?
We want to look at all the projects, right?
Projects.
Yeah.
Okay.
Projects.
Got it. Hey, Jimmy, can you make me an admin or whatever it's called for the Zoom?
Presenter.
What do you want?
So, wherever we are, panelists, thank you. So I guess the easiest way to walk through this would be for me to pull up the CIP that we have right now. So here's our utility CIP. And you wanted to look at water projects. So I'm gonna zoom in, blue for water. And it's different on my screen, so. That visible to?
Yeah,
everyone?
that's
Okay,
visible.
I have people on my screen, so it's a little tricky to see. So, if you were to take a look, for the most part, up here at the top, you'll see that there's a couple of projects that are gonna be in these. Generally speaking, with water, we're addressing the elevation and pressures. We're either going up or we're going down. Pressure reducing or we're boosting. So if you see a booster pump, that means we're trying to push water up the hill mostly. And if we're pressure reducing, that means we're trying to make sure the water that's going from up to down does not ruin everyone's lines, so to speak, below them. So a bunch of these projects are in that kind of world. 705, 1040, these are all elevations more or less. And so that's how you can understand the water in general. Overall, I believe most of Andrew's projects are related to the 705 booster pump station, the 1040 booster pump station, none in the Canyon Springs, one in the Canyon Springs, one in Canyon Springs, and none in Source Supply. And yes, on the pressure reducing valve at the top. So the top two, yes. The 705 and the Canyon Springs in the 599. So one of the things is to just note is I'm pretty aware of the projects going on. Andrew didn't just run this agenda bill into play without us knowing. These projects have been kind of inbound for a while. A lot of them represent a lot of what Andrew's work is going to do is identify exactly what's needed to achieve the goals in our system plan as they match to these. So there's some feasibility with that. Some locations it's going to be kind of an easier solution. Some locations it's a more complicated or complex solution. For example, at Canyon Springs, it's not just a solve this one problem by buying a pump and throwing it in place. It's going to be a within the building that we have, how can we structure this given the power constraints, given the physical constraints, what's needed there, generator capacity, a bunch of different things. And that's what a lot of the feasibility work that the on-call contract would be doing. But yeah, generally this is the list of those water projects in the next 2 years. I have a presentation later that's going to make this even more complicated. But yes,
I can't see wastewater.
yeah, let me scroll down. Oh, and I would like to add one last one. Down here at the bottom is combined utility mains. So that has a couple minor projects that are combined. They're the programmatic efforts, just like we see with our programmatic efforts for roads, for example, or parks, trails, those programmatic efforts.
And is that broken up? That combined?
Yep, it has money coming from all three of the utilities at their scale to each other. So if, let's say, the total revenue.
By the three utilities, you mean wastewater, stormwater, and,
in wastewater, stormwater, water.
okay. Coming from all of those.
Yep, exactly, proportional.
So a question that I had was, and it might be a Drew question, was when we were talking about, or it might be a Brian question. I don't know. Anybody who can answer this question, I'd love an answer. When we were talking about how much we could bond, and we were talking about the limitation on that, the percentage that we could bond. Was that just on wastewater that we were looking at, or were we looking at the whole water utility, all three parts of it?
We have actually kind of done a little bit of both in the whole, if you think about how we talked about rate study increases overall, but we want to identify each utility and make it stand alone so that it pays for itself and it doesn't rely on the other utilities to pay for its costs in
Why?
either side. Generally speaking, it's to make sure that one utility isn't subsidizing the other one's needs.
Why?
Drew, you got a great answer for this one?
No, the rate you charge to the community for delivery of water should pay for itself,
Sure.
okay? And it shouldn't pay for other things.
But if they're all within water,
Well,
why?
but you charge them for potable water, you charge them a separate rate for waste.
Well, it's.
I get that we do that, but why? Why wouldn't we have more leeway in the
So-
way we address needs?
I don't have the RCWs in front of me, but what I fear is that there's a cost of service, right? And so we have to make sure that we're charging up to our cost of service and not more. Someone can potentially claim and say, well, wait a second, you're charging me this for water and yet you're paying out all this. Therefore, the city is generating a profit off of water, right, overall, which we may be using for other utilities, but in that case, it may be potentially hard to prove. This is a
So then-
business
so-
type
so then wait.
type activity that we have to make sure
So
that
then
we're charging
every-
only up to our cost of service.
Okay, so just quick question. So then every municipality does it this way. They separate out the different
Yeah, I
they
believe
separate
so. I'd have to ask
stormwater,
Sergey,
wastewater,
right?
and water.
If they have that utility, correct, right? So they're potentially,
The law says they don't have utilities.
so they may have their own water, sewer, stormwater districts or things like that.
But if they do
necessarily.
have
Right.
if they do have wastewater, stormwater, and water
Mhm.
in their city, they all do it this way where they separate the three into three different categories, and each one has to have rates that pay for it specifically.
I mean, I'd probably have to, that's probably a great question for Sergey, just because this is an existential question, right? I wasn't prepared to come in.
Well, I
answer
wasn't,
existential.
I didn't, I'm
About that,
not,
but yes,
I'm
I
not
would-
water Nietzsche over here. I'm just trying to figure out, that if there was a way to structure it so that it was all just one utility, then
So-
wouldn't that give us
So
more?
I would say by code, this is one utility. There are different ways to charge for stormwater. So you can't charge stormwater the same way that you charge for water, right? For example, because there's a fixed charge and then there's a volumetric. We're charging stormwater based off of ESUs, which is the amount of impervious surface, right, of an area itself. And so consequently, in order to get more specific, you have to specify this rate is for water because that's different from how you might set up a methodology for stormwater overall. So,
Okay,
mhm.
all right. Because it seems like we're really constrained then in the way that we structure the financing.
Well, we haven't quite gone through Dylan's other presentation. He's just sharing the CIP right now, which we'll get into maybe how we can ideally reduce the rates, right? So he's got potentially a proposal to share with council, or at least to start that conversation. But otherwise, if we're having one utility, well, I know it's a combined city utility overall, but one area that utility is subsidizing another area of the utility, we have to be cautious, I think, around that overall. We want to make sure that we generate sufficient cash to maintain adequate reserves and then pay for our capital infrastructure that's coming through. And we have different methodologies for each utility itself. So we had Sergey here. I would say that that's probably the best practice. We want to adhere as much as we can to the best practices that are out there. Certainly, Sergey is one of the best utility rate consultants that you can possibly find out there. And so it's common for cities to approach it this way in which we have.
Next time you talk to Sergey, will you ask him my stupid question?
Talk to him tomorrow
It's an
morning.
existential question. It's not a stupid question. It's an existential
all right.
question. Yeah.
There's an idea that we've been collecting rates and our bonding in the past based on the buckets that they fall into, whether it's water, wastewater. So we've historically isolated them. We've combined them a while back in a certain sense, but we do try to maintain the equity between the different utilities.
Can we go back to the top of the list? Okay. Pressure zone project. So $237,000 in biennial. Does it have to be done in biennial and why?
Let me zoom into this. This is the worksheets for each of these. So if, I will go into, I can, oh yeah, sorry. A lot to prepare for with these things, and so I want to make sure that I'm ready. So the pressure reducing zones, this improvement, I believe has some criticality to it, but I think Andrew's feasibility study, you should come up if you're about to tell me the exact answer.
Why don't you
But-
just hang out up here, Andrew?
Yeah. Yeah, if you'd like us to go through it, we certainly can.
Well, and that's the intent, line
Yes.
by line. Does it have to happen in the biennial? And why?
Do you have the answer to this one?
Yeah, I had this discussion last week with our consultant to unpack this project, which is pretty complex, but This project has been in existence since 2013 in our original system plan. We've been making progress through it. We've installed a Reinig Road pressure reducing valve. We replaced a series of water mains downtown. We've installed the PRV project downtown. That's all part of this greater project. There are some outstanding items that we would like to do, doing a pressure zone study, getting the mill site loop in, and lowering the pressure downtown to bring in one of our reservoirs more into play. There's nothing immediately pressing on this, but it's been in the works for over 10 years, and it's good to make progress on it because it doesn't go away. It relates to the efficiencies of getting water through our downtown system. And the CIP has about $230,000 for it, for the execution of it.
But not immediately pressing.
Right, the on-call, we've got 20 or 30,000, I believe, out of this that would kind of do a evaluation and begin that pressure zone study.
Oh, but it sounds like other projects are contingent on this to go forward with this.
It's one system, yeah.
So a lot of what has been done on the PRV system and this project is trying to bring especially our lower zone into compliance. So we are not meeting fire flow requirements currently because we have artificially high levels of pressure downtown,
Mhm.
which we do by way of an elevation valve on one of our reservoirs. But it still doesn't get us the capacity of the reservoir to use for fire flow. So a lot of these improvements that we've been making over the years are leading to a goal of bringing this system into compliance. So we have not fully realized a lot of the improvements that we have made. So the money that we have spent is not fully utilized now until we complete this project. So this is the last remaining portions of this PRV study or PRV improvement program where we're going to adjust these pressure zones to actually, bring us into compliance. So this is our final step. And I'll say if we push this back, the reason why we don't want to push it back is because then it puts us into the same time frame as other projects that we need to do as well. So our ability to do these projects is contingent primarily on spreading them out so that one, our engineers can take these things and do them one at a time and get it done. If we stack all the projects in 1 year, we don't have the engineers to actually do the projects. Or, perhaps, we're doing today's projects in tomorrow's dollars, so it costs us more, in that regard. So that's why we want to stay on schedule with this project.
I get that.
Mhm.
I get that. And I don't think any of us are trying to diminish the importance of these projects, but
Right.
there's also importance in figuring out a way to get the rates down.
Uh-huh.
So we have to do that one way or the other.
Right.
Are we gonna do it with Drew waving a magic financial wand that he finds? I'm fine with that. Or we've got to figure out what we can push in the CIP to
Right.
make these rates
Right.
affordable.
And I just want you to make sure that you understand everything what the impacts are of pushing. And with regard to the magic wand, I think Dylan has the magic wand, which is part of the
Well,
presentation.
then why are you talking?
Because I want to get us on that.
Okay, all right, all right. Good segue. Oh, wait, question, go ahead.
Wait, go ahead.
My question is, are we truly gonna go through every CIP project and have a full presentation like this? It seems like we are not gonna have enough time to do that. So what I would really like to hear is the experts in our engineers, project managers, and directors stating what projects that they feel are of the most immediate concern. Whatever we have to say doesn't mean squat, really. But they're the ones that should be making the decisions about what needs to go forward, what can't wait, and what things are contingent on something else.
Well, I agree with everything you just said. except that what I have to say does mean squat.
Well, when it comes to the vote, yes, that's,
It only means squat.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, Ryan?
Yeah, except guys, nothing in what was previously said gave me cause to keep this project on the books, except fire pressure downtown. The rest of it, I'm sorry, the community says we can't afford it. Just because we've been doing this for 5 years doesn't mean we get to do it for 6, if the community cannot afford it. Okay, so I'm listening to what you're saying, not necessarily about the particular project. And guys, I'm not hearing the right things, giving the pushback we got.
Yeah.
Okay, this means, why is it here? Can it move? If not, why not? And we need to get the rates down. That's what we heard, right?
That's what I think what we're trying to tell you.
Okay, well, this last conversation was not of the right tone, guys, in my opinion.
Dylan's got the one.
Just wrote, I'm sorry, I was not prepared for the criticality of each of the CIPs and directly how that relates. I was prepared for that before when we discussed this program and the timing before. So I maybe misinterpreted a bit of the previous council meeting on how to approach the review of the CIP projects and programs. I prepared something slightly different. And that is a bit why you caught me off guard and I've had to ask everyone.
Sorry
to come
about
and back
that.
up. No, it's not a problem. I just, there's, I know, 30 or almost some 20 something projects on here. And I just wasn't quite ready to bring the combination of review of the system plans, the 3 of them, to every single project and program and make sure that that's really clear. I can do that. I just wasn't prepared for it for this evening. but,
That's probably our fault for not giving clear enough instructions. So,
no, it's fine.
Chair?
Yeah.
So what we did do is put together a presentation for tonight with some recommended delays that we believe will have the impact on the rates that we believe you're looking for. And I would suggest that maybe we have Dylan make that presentation and then we go back to this if you feel we need to cut more. But we do have a presentation that does, we believe, get you where you want to be.
Okay.
So Dylan, can you give that presentation, please?
Indeed. I am not going to do what we formally or normally do, which is go through all the steps, but I'm pretty sure we're all very familiar of how you get to a rate study. So kind of quickly move. This is what we gave as a consideration for things to reduce the rates at the last council meeting on the 13th. So that's a wall of text, but essentially it is the exact same wall of text that you received last week on Monday. I just left it here in case as a reference point, but we discussed a lot of things. Keeping a lot of the debts related things the same, except for sewer. So we did modify that 700,000. You could see it in there. And we had a lot of considerations for that 1.5% coverage and some other details. But what I wanted to get to is kind of the feedback that we received from that conversation, as well as the ordinance that was prepared for it. I'm sorry, the ordinance that was prepared, and then we also gave some comments. This is the feedback I took from that meeting to then try to work with Sergey in the models and create a solution. So what we provided before was an ordinance that met the CIP, trying to time it right and achieve the bonding that we had kind of worked together on over the course of many meetings. And if we put that on the far end, what I took from your feedback was to give us a number that is much lower, consider all these things. And I went further, I maximized debt, as we kind of discussed as a comment, that took us below the 10% number that you requested. And so I left it here. And now there is a checklist, so to speak, of options that we can consider to try to get us to the exact number that you're comfortable with, given that debt has penalties of its own. So this is the feedback I got. These are the choices that I made in order to kind of start us down this path. So first and foremost, delays to the mains projects that are all crossing the river. So they're all basically 3-year projects. The first year is a feasibility and identify how we're going to get mains across the river, whether it's a new bridge, a microtunnel, boring, there's lots of options. Essentially, if we delay that out, all three of the utilities is away from 2025, which is the year that we have peak or spiking of the rates, so to speak, and of the debt. Move those out 3 years, they move on all three. So that's actually quite a few little things in there moved. The second one is to, it was a re-review of all the projects that were kind of crossing the line between 2024 and 25 to make sure that we were accurate to what we anticipated needing in the year we needed it. In this case, we can reduce 384th by 250,000. We had anticipated that the sewer would have to cover more than it needs to in this biennium, according to our rates. So we can just reduce the program, the utility mains replacements, the sewer or the wastewater's contribution to that program by 250,000, just directly. The third one is to increase debt for all three utilities. And this is complicated because everything changes, everything starts to change when we consider the impacts to that. We'll get into that in just a second. And to make sure that we do not exceed that 1.5 ratio for any of the utilities combined or otherwise. The last one is to switch the loan for the Class A water reservoir from a 20-year to a 30-year. And that also is reflected in the rate. So going from a 1.2, which is the shorter, to a longer term deal, which is the 1.6. All these had impacts. They all kind of moved things a bit. We're trying to, at least my intent was to try to bring down that 2025 peak impact using these types of things.
So
The-
the,
My
I'm
computer
sorry.
froze, sorry.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Okay. So when we were looking at the $700,000
Yep.
increase, was that only going to 1.5 on wastewater or stormwater
Sewer,
rather?
Wastewater.
Only going to 1.5 on that, but you're talking about another one where we go to 1.5 on all three.
Yes, yeah, bringing them all closer, but do not exceed that 1.5.
But that would bring down all of
Them go down.
all of them
yeah.
would go down.
And that makes the average residential bill go down.
That was what I was trying to say.
Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I didn't say it well, but that's something that we could do. And how much more would that reduce those other ones?
I don't know if I have a slide that demonstrates that exactly. Sorry, my Zoom just fell apart. So I will work on the background to try to get that up. It reduced each one by something, and the trick is that when we move projects in years, it reduced the water bill, for example, a bit in each year too. So if I move things from being in 2025 over, then the consequences of that reduce the total burden on the water, the Class A and the sewer or wastewater. So that moves some things. Basically, every one of these actions had an impact. And that meant that we could reduce the peak burden of 2025, which was driving up most of the charges. Knowing that sewer or wastewater in the CIP was a major driver of the rate increases. It's the largest utility. If it has high CIP costs, which it did, it reflects quickly.
Right, but people pay one bill, so if the other ones go down as well, then the bill goes down. Right?
Yes, I mean, if we reduce any
Remember
one
that,
part,
and it
it
just-
reduces everything. And that's why looking back at, sorry, Jimmy, do you mind? If we go back and reduce any of the aspects, it does reduce their total bill. But
Jimmy,
again, we are always looking at that sewer wastewater because it's the big.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we've got to get bills down.
Jimmy, are we offline?
Say again?
Are we offline?
I am.
We all are.
are.
We all lost our Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Do we need to stop talking?
Hey, Jimmy, if we're all.
I think the public might want this, so I want to confirm that we are recording this before we lose a big chunk of it. Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
Zoom is still up on my.
What is?
Yeah.
I can't.
We're
get
still
it.
online? Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, please interrupt.
We're still recording.
Jimmy, we're still recording? Okay.
Okay.
Continue talking. I liked what you were saying.
Yeah, yes. Jimmy, are you sure? I can't have.
Well,
Maybe generalities for a second.
or if you want to get Drew up here to talk more about what you were just talking about with the 1.5 on the all three things.
Yeah,
That different? Is that, so,
I can tell you his
Okay.
negatives, if that's what you mean.
sure,
Okay.
sure, you can tell me negatives too, but I want to know. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing wrong with reducing the cost of all three. There's nothing wrong with that because that's not subsidizing one with another. That's just reducing the rates on all of them.
Yes, yes,
And
yeah.
that's per our policy, where before we'd actually looked at an option going below 1.5,
Mhm.
correct? So I mean, this is per our policy to kind of maintain our good standing for bonds and whatever.
Exactly, yeah. So what we had proposed on last council meeting was nudging down below 1.5. There was impacts to that, and that's what Drew went into with, yeah, the difficulty of bonding and other credit worthiness type discussions. The takeaway from that was don't do that and go for bonding and look at all three now, not just at sewer. So that's what we looked at. I can tell you some of these big numbers in my head. For example, I believe the request was to bring the residential combined bill to below 10%. I think
Keep
the
going.
combined bill is 6.7, but the consequence is the debt has to go up. Obviously, if we increase the debt by on all three of the utilities, it goes up by nearly $8 million over the course of the 6 years that we have. It's not exactly a one-to-one because I move projects over. We increase the debt in different years just to try to maximize that benefit. And so I've tried to take us as debt heavy now as possible. If that is uncomfortable, then I want to hear what your thoughts are. But my thinking was that you could either consider the projects that we removed, delayed, kicked over, or whatever, and increase rates by whatever that feeling is, more or less using rates and bonding as a bit of an equivalency there. But again, we can go through the CIP list item per item.
Yeah.
Jeff. So I do think that the highlight
Come
that
fix ours.
you had previously brought up was right on as far as what, summarizing what we had decided on previous council meetings, or at the previous council meeting. And it was basically increasing the generational equity by taking on more debt, which initially you and I were against, because, you know, it just, you hate to take on more debt, but in this instance, it actually makes an impact. And so I saw that you were doing it in several places between the ecology loan. The unfortunate part is that the interest rate does go up with the more debt we take on. Well, a little bit. I don't know if that makes a big impact or not.
Well, 1.6% is less than inflation.
Yeah.
I'd have to run the numbers of whether that it may actually be financially as a present cost of money beneficial to run it out to 30 years at 1.6 versus 20 at 1.2.
Yes.
You're below inflation. That's good investment.
The larger one was the bonds, the revenue bonds,
Yeah.
increasing those. The debt servicing of that is much larger, I think, than the 20-year to 30-year difference.
But
covering that.
those types of things, which, you know, certainly I'm willing to, you know, listen to that as far as if it helps drive down the, you know, monthly bill type of a thing. You know, understanding how these things are working more. But again, I think that the Parks and Public Works folks are definitely the ones that can, you know, give us the information about which projects, and it sounds like Dylan's already done it, which projects can be pushed back. So I'd sure like to hear what he has to say first before we go item by item through the CIP list.
Okay. You ready to go?
I thought I was before, but I'm very ready now. So,
Okay.
yeah, so this is that slide we were just at. I'm gonna go ahead and skip to the next one because I think that's the meat and potatoes. We were so close to getting to this one. So if you were to look at the top, this is the ordinance proposal. So you'll see that 12.35 on 2025, that's the combined average residential bill percentage increase. If you were to go to the below version, which is the one that does the things that I mentioned in the previous slide, you'll see it does this instead, which definitely smooths. We're essentially using the debt to kind of smooth the entire operation there, as well as delaying some projects. So 6.78 and then 3.3 basically cast in the future is the, and then the other big component you'll see here is the difference between 33.5 million and 40.8. Yeah,
Does Drew have some cons that he wants to share?
no, he's just asking me where did your numbers come from? There's a lot of models that go into producing these kinds of data, and so I think we're just making sure that it was in line with the exact same thing that you've seen before. It was calculated the same way. So,
Just want to make sure, right? This is a draft at this point, right?
yes.
So nothing's guaranteed. So the numbers that he's showing you are preliminary at
This
this
is like a
stage until-
ballpark.
This is
Yeah.
a ballpark, right, at this
Okay.
stage, because we need the consultant to verify, right? And
Yeah.
it sounds like you worked with them through this as well.
yeah, we're not going to be too far from this, but don't expect it. Be prepared for decimals to change. Don't expect it to go from like, oh, sorry, I was wrong. 6 is out now 15 or something like that. More like, I don't think it's gonna be 6.78. It might have to be 6.79 to make sure that we're not crossing that 1.5. Exactly.
As long as you're within 100.
100. Gotcha. Yeah, that's the caveat I would say is that we quickly tried to modify it based on that list. And this is kind of what we got. And we made sure that we weren't hitting that debt limits and some other things, but we are very close. And so we'll want to make sure that we're not accidentally not meeting it in later years. Some of those
Do
things.
you have a chart? I'm sorry, did you guys want to say something? Did you have any kind of chart as to is this what it is?
I don't know.
What this would look like for the different classes?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So this is the multifamily one that we just kind of passed through, residential. This is the same chart as you would have seen at the ordinance, or I'm sorry, last council meeting. So in last council meetings, you would have seen something very similar, a chart on the top, chart on the bottom. The one on the bottom would have been our one with, just the 700,000 in sewer concept. This one now reflects the one I'm proposing this evening. Because the debt in theory impacts all projects. So, or all classes. I have this for all three, or all four, I should say. Here's commercial low. And then I'll go one more for commercial high, and I'm happy to go back to any of these. But they all essentially will have a decrease. They're not all the same in size. Again, the residential is a larger customer class typically than any of the other ones, and so. And the last thing I'd mention is that these are hypothetical business customers, right? We had to guesstimate what an average business customer in the high commercial customer class would be utilizing in terms of the variable charges. And then this is we oftentimes call this the COSA, but this is how we are trying to correct for the inaccuracies of one customer class paying for too much. This is more draft than most things. This will want to really dial in.
And this is sewer only.
This is sewer only. Last time you reviewed it and the times before it, we really looked at sewer only. And so I kept it in the same frame of reference that was used before. And then I brought in, this is that historical data. This is just directly from the previous slideshow. And yeah, I know it's very difficult to read. I'm sorry. So I just had this here in case that's valuable as a reference point to now compare the new numbers that I'm proposing to. I think it puts them into context. And this is multifamily and residential. The next slide is commercial, high and low.
This doesn't show 25.
This is a historical.
This is historical.
Yeah, 2025, it's very wide. a very fun slide. If you didn't like it now. Yeah. Font size.
And you have one for commercial as well?
That's right. Yep. And these haven't changed.
This is based on just financing stuff, or is this also based on cutting, pushing projects?
Historical records exist.
No, I'm sorry. The 25 numbers that you showed us,
Yeah.
is that based solely on financing?
No,
Uh,
it's all these things.
It's all the things.
All the things
combined.
on this slide. It's the correction of
The
3/4 overspend. It's the delaying some mains projects across the river by 1 year, all of them. And it is looking at the debt for all three, and it is modifying the Class A ecology loan from 20 years to 30 years. And it is keeping any bonding at a 20-year bonding year cycle. I didn't change.
But
that.
if we looked at it at the 30-year,
Potentially it could be different. I just didn't get that impression to go and address that at this time, but because historically we have done 20-year loans. I'll ask Drew if he has some sort of holdout, but I was already changing a lot of things.
So the 2018 revenue bond that council adopted as an ordinance and we issued for the most part was a 30-year bond at that time. And primarily you want to match up the length of the bond with the average life of the facility itself. So at that time, we had a number of facilities that were going to survive well beyond 30 years at that point, which it made sense from an intergenerational equity perspective to try to carry that bond out as far as we could. Obviously, if you go with a 20-year, that's going to reduce the interest rate, but also the payment's going to be higher, right, overall. Basically, if you extend it out to a 30-year term, then eventually the debt service is going to take a little bit longer to pay back over that time at a higher interest rate, which is what they would request because obviously they're tying up their money for a longer period of time, right, within the city itself. So, but it helps to reduce the debt service overall and therefore bring down the rates. You'll get shorter rates or lower rates in the short term, but as we kind of talked about previously, if you have kind of a large debt, right, portfolio, and it extends out for a long period of time, that starts to add up for the rates that come later, say in 30 years or so.
what other, what big projects do we have that we're looking at 30 years from now? Do you have that kind of modeling yet?
All three of the system plans have a very accurate 10-year window, and then they have a increasingly less accurate one after that. And there's a lot of reasons to it. One is we don't really know where the growth is going to go in 30 years. So we don't have a perfect model of what growth is going to be and what's going to be required to achieve it. We don't really know the changes in regulatory requirements like we are finding out in different utility aspects.
Right, but
So
if we
all
were,
those
if we were to
things.
grow massively, then there would be a lot of GFCs to pay for whatever additions that we had to make to the system, right? That wouldn't be something that we would suddenly have to come up with all of the financing for. Like the system that we have now was initially built by the folks who built the Ridge. The developers that built the Ridge built our water treatment plant that we have right now. We didn't have to pay for that. That was paid for by builders. Right?
Yep. Yeah, and that is true. I guess it depends with the way that the system plans are all generated. They have a assumed amount of growth that's reasonable within the existing footprint of the city. So there's some areas where it's going to be either impossible or difficult to develop. And so it's usually a planning effort meets meets a system plan. And the combination of that is what gets us our list of activities for 10 years for the most part when we are required to review them again. But it does sketch us out into the future. It just, like I said, gets shakier in terms of timing, size.
I've heard estimates that our water facility improvements that we've done recently
Yeah.
should last about 50 years. Am I imagining that number, or did I hear that number?
It depends on the facility. We have a combination of different things. We have chlorination pumps that have one lifetime. We have water mains that have a 50-year lifetime. We have some that are a combination of different types and ages and size that all have different kind of expected lifetimes. And then we have those booster pumps and they have a different lifetime. It's a real hodgepodge
Okay.
of
Alright.
things, not to make it more confusing.
No. It's as confusing as it is.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
So one of the wild cards that you can never plan for is what is going to be the regulatory changes as you go out that far. I guarantee you, 20 years ago, when they put in the Class A system, they never imagined that we'd have to put in a reservoir to service that Class A system. And that's a big chunk of money. So that really throws inaccuracies into being able to project out that far.
No, I was just bringing him to your attention.
Thank you. Go on.
Yes, so yeah, there's a couple of things you're not going to see in my presentation that I just want to make upfront. One, I was not able to calculate the debt servicing cost. So when we increase debt, what I don't have for you is a number that shows the amount we're now going to pay for each of these things based on now paying for interest on top of it.
That's that other 100th, right?
Is that other- no, I don't know what it is. It's kind of a more complicated one. So we can do this. I just did not have time given the other criteria. But that is one thing I would think is important to weigh. But I do think that's reasonably understood given that we went through the bonding process, the revenue requirement when we looked at bonding. And originally we kind of looked at those numbers. I just didn't produce them for this. Yeah, and so this is one of the things I wanted to produce for this unit, but was not able to. It's not insignificant though. It will be
It'll matter.
significant.
It'll make a
yes.
difference.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
For an extra $7 million of bonding, it will be every year we will pay more for sure. Yeah. I don't want to give you a number because I feel like I'm just going to be immediately wrong, but it'll be hundreds of thousands for $7 million. It will be.
Okay. Can you go back to those 2025 numbers? The altogether,
Yeah, if I can find my mouse. This one? Or the much more complicated ones that are later on?
you had one that showed all the classes, didn't you?
Not all together. There's too much to show on one chart. So here's residential, here's multifamily, commercial, high and low. This is
Stay here.
okay. This is high. Well, you wanted to see the COSA classes, I think. When you're done.
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is what you're asking for. This is just sewer. So for the other ones that we just went through, that would be the combined hypothetical customer who pays a bill. We created a model for those, and that percentage increases a lot of times what this conversation is kind of spun around. Rather than looking at just these straight rate change numbers, which should just be reflective directly of the cost increases anyway, but.
Which is the number again that's based on impervious surfaces for commercial
Stormwater.
stormwater?
Yep.
And you don't have those
I-
numbers. You only have sewer.
I did not pull it up
That's okay.
here, no. It's included in these. So for example, here I'll just take you. A standard residential customer pays 1 ESU. It's very flat math. It's a fixed charge. And your other customer classes will pay based on the amount of impervious surface they have. So a residential customer pays 1 ESU regardless if it's a 3-acre lot or a 1/4 acre. And as long as it's one single family residence, and then all other groups actually pay based on square footage. There's an equation in our code. Take the amount of square footage in square feet, and it has a multiplier number, and that gives you an ESU equivalent number that's what the charge is.
If a commercial business owns property that is, let's say it's 100% impervious surface.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. If they reduce that impervious surface by 25% because they don't actually need that to be impervious surface, would that also reduce their stormwater fee?
Yeah, so there's a list of criteria that the code indicates as this is what we consider impervious and this is what we don't consider impervious. If they were to modify these things in a substantial way, I think they would request a revision to their ESU calculation.
It's not automatic. They'd have to come.
Yeah, we don't check in.
Yeah.
I don't pull up a map all the time.
You don't
and
go to
yeah.
Google, look for who's got more planners.
Exactly.
No.
Okay. You guys got any more questions on this?
No, not on the rates. I see improvements but I do think I would certainly like your input on, or the other engineers' inputs too, as far as which projects you folks feel comfortable with that we could potentially push back a year or two.
Yes, so that is why I grabbed the ones I did, selected. Pushing projects back in like 2028 didn't really fix the rates going up a lot in 2025 problem. So I tried to really focus in on the ones that were causing this high peak. And let me pull up the system plans for you.
And did you look, were you looking at all projects that in any way affected the utility cost?
I looked at all projects, and then in conversations with the team, all the considerations that Jeff made about capacity and ability, and trying to time projects in a way that our engineers could handle the capacity, it was meeting the intent of the project. That is what the review process I went through. I'm almost certain that in every way, almost every project has some detail that could be considered again. It would be pretty specific, and we'd have to go into quite a deep dive. We added these projects initially to the CIP for a pretty important reason, and we have now moved them in time, some of them, to try to better match our ability to complete them and to try to smooth the impacts of any one year. So this chart here does not reflect the changes I'm proposing, right? So I would propose nudging some of these details out. That is to say, yes, I reviewed them. Maybe it's not with as fine a tooth of comb that you'd want me to.
No.
But I didn't just ignore everything and pick the projects I hated. I tried to be very protective of the ones that I know were important. But I would ask that the engineers all come up for each of their projects, but.
So it looks like over the next couple of years, we're looking at $500,000 in urban forestry.
More.
And
In urban forestry improvements program?
yeah, to the stormwater.
Yes. Do you want me to go to that?
Would you guys be amenable to looking at a few projects at this point that we have questions on?
Yeah, I mean, we have a half hour left.
Cool. Well, hang on. Just-
Oh, you can move to hang on.
Well, no, she's right. I just, the goals shifted a little bit. I believe when we walked out of this meeting last week, we said, yeah, 10% sounds good.
I like 6% more.
I think when we got public comment in the last council meeting, we got maybe something a little less.
Yeah.
So I think that may be a go-to that under that new target of less, that you guys do the review of projects. What can shift out? You guys are the experts of what the impact would be of those things. Yeah. So what can shift out and what's the impact? But I think that's a homework assignment versus us junior engineering your CIP. I think I'm the only one with an engineering degree and I haven't used it in 20 years up here. So it
I
would
had a
be
model train when
improper.
I was a kid. So,
Okay,
yeah.
it would be improper for us to do that. But I think you guys are the expert. I think the new go-do is lower than 10%. How low can we get it and still be comfortable?
Can I ask a question about next steps then? Would you like us to do that now or in addition to bringing anything? I'm always pushing timing. I know that's not always on that path, but I just want to know what I should be bringing to the next Public Works Committee meeting. And just my only request is to recognize that I have to do a public noticing again for any council meeting. So if the turnaround time needed to increase a lot, I have a delay that is built into the process. I know that's not everyone's favorite thing, but I just want everyone to be aware that if we get to the point where we're like, yeah, this is good, I still need a few weeks to to even get us to an ordinance position.
Oh, great, but I think the next go-do is do that review of projects. What can be shifted out, what should remain
Okay.
where it is? How does that impact? You've got your other things that you've already stated on here that you're doing. Some of those need to be incorporated, some already have,
Mhm.
but get those incorporated. Come back with that as you're ready, back to Parks and Public Works. From there, if the numbers are looking good, then we go to council.
Okay.
Is that reasonable?
Does it sound good to you?
I can do the review of this, yeah. I could almost do it right now. I just,
I
there's
don't
a
want
couple
to
things
I
I
don't want
don't,
to put you
yeah.
through that.
Yeah, I can do all my projects, that's for
You
sure.
can do it right now as long as you can get it within 100.
Too
100
tight,
what?
too tight of a limit there.
Smell foods?
All right, is that a good homework assignment?
Yes, yeah, we'll bring this to the next Public Works Committee meeting.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Drew, did you have something?
Right. In essence, right now, what we have scheduled is the likely adoption date, if we were to move forward as quickly as possible, would be the second meeting in February. This could potentially push it into March and April, and at that point, already by the amount of time that's going to take to do that review, we're going to already be pushing some of these projects off to 2026, potentially at this point, because we might miss the construction season. So I think they're focused on that catch up, keep up, step up, right, framework overall. I think a lot of what we've proposed as a part of the CIP is catch up, keep up, right? Generally, as much as possible. We want to make sure that we're not deferring maintenance too. So hopefully this isn't a huge effort on their part. I think in order to really kind of review that, certainly they can go through that, but just understand where, and I know we've heard from Councilmember Holloway previously not to put council under a time crunch necessarily, but certainly we're feeling it internally ourselves because it is important for us to get these bids out the door if we're going to start this, especially over the summer. Thank you.
You got away before you could answer him.
I know,
Cat-
he did the appropriate thing. I didn't, no, I have no comment.
Cat,
No, it wasn't for Director Boutte. Just in general, I do, looking at the list that Project Manager Gamble provided, that there are a couple of big things that we do have time constraints on with the, starting with the reservoir and, things like this. Also, the Sandy Cove restoration, the riverbank restoration, we've already pushed that off a year and it's already eroded even more. So we can't push that off any longer. I mean, there are some of these things that are like the bottom layer of projects that might be pushed off a bit, but these are the things holding them in place.
I think we ought to have the experts take a look at this rather than us trying to
Yeah,
junior
because what
engineer
I'm saying
this.
means squat. I know that, but
I like that term, Dave. But, so maybe we add a bullet to the next agenda that says, if there are projects that we need to go ahead and say, yes, this is going to be committed, we need to do it. Bring those forward and let's have that discussion. So maybe there's a middle of the road where one or two projects we say, yeah, this is probably, we gotta go do, it's regulatory or whatever. And it's within your numbers and still makes sense. Then, on a case by case, we can have discussion and say, yeah, let's move forward on that.
With 100th of leeway.
I should say.
Would it be helpful if I have them annotate the water projects that deal with fire flow? Is that something that council's particularly interested in knowing? Anything else that we can do to the list to help quickly identify which ones you want to keep or get out?
I think we want an honest list of what's time critical and what can be put off, what can be pushed a year or two.
I was just trying to avoid the 5 minutes of talking before we got the magic word out, which was fire flow.
Yeah, things like that. I don't think any of us are interested in sacrificing public safety for anything. So.
All right.
And we want to keep Sandy Cove Park. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Thank you. All right, what's the next thing on our crazy agenda that's all mixed up now? Anybody see it?
Well, so then we go back to the conversation of the contract for RH RH2,
That agenda bill?
that agenda bill. Do we proceed forward on that, or do we hold off until we've had this next conversation of what projects are moving forward? And therefore ought to be under that contract, and what contract value does that drive?
Sounds like you're suggesting tabling that.
I'm suggesting tabling that at the moment.
Seconded.
And I guess the question to staff is, what happens if that one goes an additional 2 weeks before we move forward?
It's not gonna have impact.
This is like, this is next year, right? Or,
Starting this year, but yeah, moving into next year.
Okay. so we got time.
There is one reason why you might consider just moving forward with it, and that's to put us under contract, and we will spend the money per se. We know that there's gonna be some work that needs to be done, so we could focus in on the projects we know are high priority and start to get things building, knowing that it's gonna take a couple weeks to get through contracting, the contract routing process and things like that. And we do have money budgeted for a bunch of these projects already in the previous CIP and rates. I know that you don't want to detangle them. I'm also trying to be very cognizant of getting the projects completed that are high priority and urgent. Just if you wanted to weigh that consideration as well as an additive.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
If, and I'm not sure of how, with the contract, do they just bill as they do the projects, or is it the whole thing up front?
No, they bill as they do the work. So his project is divided across multiple CIPs. So he's actually
Right.
gonna have a very complicated invoice that he's gonna have to unpack. And so he'll kind of bill per project. Sometimes they have different teams depending on the work that he does. So, yeah, it'll be billed by the project, and he will split it apart and charge it
So
correctly.
even if we look at it and approve, and tentatively, or approve it and pass that forward, it's still not gonna be the whole 440 something.
440 goes into the calculations of your rates.
That would go into the rate study, right?
Yep.
Okay.
He based it on the rate study that I showed you, the CIP that I demonstrated
Not the-
tonight,
Not the,
not a delayed one.
not the draft one.
The one that has the 3 different colors of the utilities.
Oh, okay.
That
okay.
chart, that he used that chart and the timing of those projects to create a contract to try to get feasibility studies and the technicalities identified ahead of the project's design. For those projects in those years, for 25 and 26.
Okay, so, okay.
So if we delay something beyond this biennium, then I'd say that's real tricky, but most of the projects are within this biennium. And they're smaller, the feasibility study is not the full cost of the project too, not
Okay.
complicated.
You still, your motion still stand?
Motion still stands delayed until
Okay.
next one.
All right, I'm still gonna second that. Drew, did you have something else?
So I think we also have to keep in mind that we have a system to operate. This isn't really tangentially related to operating the system, but we have a system to operate that is starting in 2025. The rates that we approve will ideally pay for the operations of the system. And so I can't stop the operations of the system for a full 3 or 4 months necessarily. So that is ongoing work. What we have told people internally ourselves is to maintain status, as much as status quo as possible for the previous biennium, so that no one is exceeding what they spent previously, so that we can kind of maintain, that kind of baseline level at this time, but not really kind of exceed that at this point. So that is what we've told our staff out there. And I just wanted to keep that in mind for everyone, that there are some things that we will have to be paying for just because we have to continue to operate the system. So, thank you.
Okay. We have had more public show up since public comment. I would like to reopen public comment if you guys are amenable to that.
Yeah.
Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment? Oh, you, sir. And your name is?
Jim Mayhew, Snoqualmie, resident. You guys are doing fantastic work in my opinion. Just one thing you might think about in past years when we did these, re-evaluations of projects, one of the things we did to try and keep the pressure off of staff is to give them sort of a dollar amount. So if you really think about rates, if your project is of just a few $100,000 project, moving that out just isn't going to have that meaningful an impact on rates. So you might be able to help them by narrowing down that you only want them to look at projects of say $1 million or more, or maybe it's $750,000, somewhere, because it's those large projects and the timing of those that are really going to make a difference on your rates. So just thought you might want to think about that to help staff. Great work.
Unfortunately, those are the ones we have to proceed forward with.
Yeah, the big ones are.
This is about all long. 2 pages.
Okay. Next, we go to the agenda bill, right? Is that the next thing?
Except I think we agreed to.
Oh,
table
we
that
just,
to bring
we're
it back to
tabling
next
that,
time.
and then the next thing
So I
is the
think we're gonna
discussion.
fund something fun, splash pad.
Splash pad. Who's talking about the splash pad?
Patrick.
I hope something fun.
I love splash pads too. I only
Is it all
just
done?
had one.
Last summer.
We're just gonna put the Sasquatch at your house for a while.
Yeah.
What do you like to call it then?
Thought he was giving this little
Right.
presentation.
Yep, presentation. Okay, evening council, committee, mayor, members of the public. Patrick Fry, project engineer, City of Snoqualmie, you know me. Yeah, so just after a lot of delays, I figured I will give a splash pad construction update. Seems like a good time to do it.
Hold on,
as-
there was a delay.
Exactly. Just because there's been a lot of progress recently, and I'm actually finally feeling like in a good place about this project after about 6 months of not. That. So anyways, if you remember, it's this is the concept. It's a peanut shaped with about 48 features on the pad itself. And last summer, when we were hoping that it was going to be done, it looked like this, which was just a lot of site work. We had the tanks in the ground, but that's really about it. But since then, we have laid all the piping out to all of the features, and as you can see, it's a bit of a rat nest of pipes in there, but that's what gets to all the 48 features out there.
That is a very well laid out bunch of pipes. That is not a rat's nest. You guys did a great job.
So yeah, in that regard, while the contractor has been slow and challenging in their manpower, it's really been two folks that have been up there doing the brunt of this work, and they've actually been fantastic, which is great because while the contractor, the general, is terribly frustrating, I actually don't fear about the quality that was installed. I've been up there pretty much all day, or not all day, every day, along with Mike and the other engineers. So we've been monitoring the construction, and everything's been built to spec. There's been a lot of eyes on it, and the folks up there actually know what they're doing. It's just been understaffed, which is why it's been so slow. So yeah, it doesn't look like a rat nest in that regard, but it's just it's a lot of pipe in a small amount of area. So that's what you're seeing here. It's well organized. Anyways, this was back in, call it September is what I'll call this. It might have been August. But recently there's been a lot of concrete work been going in up there. And so all of those pipes are now buried under concrete. And this is what it looks like today, which is actually fantastic progress, because at this point, really, that's all that is required is putting the features up. So right now, all the pipes are in there. Pretty much everything is operational. We're just letting the concrete cure, and then we're going to be putting the features up, which is really just plunking them in place, bolting them down, and hooking the hoses up. Just a couple of days of work, but we're going to be letting the concrete cure for a couple of weeks before that happens. And so I'm actually feeling good about it. There is one feature up right now just because it had a footing, and that's going to be the log waterfalls with the bear leaning against it. And just to touch on it,
Because of the delays, as of today, we have $14,900 in liquidated damages. So that will be money that will be coming back to us seen on the final invoice. So it's really, for example, say the final invoice is 100 grand, we just subtract the amount that is liquidated damages. So it's going to be slightly more than $15,000, which will just help pay for other items.
What is the liquidated damages consist of? What,
It's just delays. So it's just every day that they're delayed, we just get more money. And so you put that in contracts to try to encourage contractors to finish on time. The value of liquidated damages is typically based upon the severity of if the project isn't finished. So like 384th, that sewer job, if it wasn't finished on time, the liquidated damages was something like $2,000 a day because that's a major problem. When this is quite a bit less because, well, the splash pad is a delight, but it's not, you know, affecting the casino's operations if it's not operational in time. And so it's just a smaller value, which is why we have $15,000 as opposed to, you know, $100,000.
and this is gonna go up every day?
Every day, yep, every working day that is. So it's not on weekends, holidays, they don't get charged for that. But yeah.
Not when people would use a splash pad or anything like that. Okay, they shouldn't have to pay for
Yep.
that, yeah. I gotta tell you, the magnitude of the delay on this project and the magnitude of the cost of this project seems like it should have a bigger damages.
Yeah,
there.
I completely agree. It's just one of the challenges with the way that the contract.
Is
set
that,
up.
is that industry standard 1/1000th of the contract?
No.
Is,
No, it's totally dependent on projects and what parties agree to.
I think that's 1/1000th, isn't it? Isn't it? Is it 100th? Okay, all right. I'm not that great. Well, still, it's not very much.
Yep.
1 penny on the dollar does not seem like.
Yep.
There were a lot of
Hey,
people who
but
were ticked off
it-
that
yeah,
it wasn't ready for.
Again,
that last
the
summer.
splash pad, the impact to the city of not having it was,
People were impacted.
people
People were
were,
impacted.
peace, I
People were
heard the same thing,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like there was brown water.
You
coming out of
don't,
the
you have
faucet.
no idea how many time I said, were you told which July?
I never tried that one, all right.
That's it. That's all I've got for you.
Thank you. All right, now I think
Wait, hang on, so.
you got
when-
more.
When are we expecting to be splashing?
First nice day of the spring or summer.
When do you, well, let me ask differently.
So we're
When
gonna-
are you expecting to be done?
We will be testing and balancing by the end of February, which I'd like to test and balance as long as we possibly can. But realistically, typically that's done in about 2 to 4 weeks, which means we could be functional by April 1st. I wouldn't expect to be operational because of weather before April 1st.
Cold
So-
plunge is a thing now.
So-
People aren't gonna go to the splash pad in April. They'll
Yeah.
get all wet.
My recommendation to somebody who ran these in the past would be Memorial Day to Labor Day. And then depending on weather at Labor Day, you can extend it if you're having a September heat wave. But that's something we need to figure out and bring forth hours of operation and all that to set those rules.
Exactly. But yeah, to the gist of your question, we're going to be operational by this
Or something.
this summer. Yep. And that's what, you know, up until today, I didn't feel like I could say that 100% confidently, but now I can.
All right.
I knew all along we would get it done by summer.
One of them.
Yeah, it's been a challenge, we'll say. And it was really a contractor. We had a difficult contractor and
Does that contractor go on a list of contractors that
he
we had a
definitely is on
challenge
our
with?
list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Top of my list.
So I don't think, well, he won't be invited back to the city.
Got it. Alright.
So, staffing report, really quickly. For staffing, we are interviewing right now for a new urban forester Tech 2 position. And we had actually a remarkable set of candidates. I think we had 9 qualified applicants for our position, of which I think we are shortlisting 4, and a couple of them are just extraordinary. And so we're hoping to have our new urban forester in place here by, I think, the end of next week. Is hopefully when we'll.
Be wonderful to finally have somebody competent in that position.
Well, yeah, you know what? It was tough because we lost somebody who was so good, and but we didn't really lose him. We elevated him to our deputy director, who's Phil. And so to replace him, we needed to find somebody who could fill those big shoes, and I think.
I saw what you did. That was good.
So I think we found, 1 or 2 of, of these 4, we'll find a really good one.
Please only hire one of them.
Just one.
Okay, all right.
That's it. That's all we have room for. And then we also have a new Public Works admin, but we haven't started that process yet. We're gonna wait till we get through the utility rate adjustment because it's a utility position, so we won't hire that position until we have the utility rates figured out. Some good news. We have we won a Project of the Year. American Public Works Association awarded the Parkway paving project a Project of the Year award, which is remarkable. That's our second one since I've been here, and that's good. We don't get too many of those. We're a small city, and we don't have big projects that typically win awards like that, and they have to be executed very well, and this one was. And we didn't put in for it. It was actually our contractor who put in for it. They thought that it was such a good project that it deserved that award. And so we are somewhat the beneficiaries of it, but it was a very successful project, finishing it on time and under budget, such a big paving job was actually a remarkable achievement. So, yeah, and kudos to him. Ahmed, who's great.
Can we send that to WashDOT and let them know this is what we do with your money?
They were impressed when they got $1 million back.
Yeah, we gave him $1 million back. Yeah, I mean, That was
They got
pretty
$1 million back and they got an award-winning project. So I mean,
Now
yeah,
we
I
have to
think
just
we
take
could
it
probably
off.
send them a notice. That's not a bad idea. Yeah, it's a good idea. We'll do that. We'll crow a little bit to WashDOT. I don't know if that'll impress them much, but we'll try it.
That was our contribution to 18.
Yeah, right, right. Quick project updates. 384th is essentially complete. The sewer improvements are completed, and that's fully functional and done. I think I may have told you guys this before.
Does it all go down now?
It all flows downhill, and we have removed all the sags from the line, so we don't have the surcharge issue anymore on that, and we've increased its capacity. So that is another successful project for us. And the sidewalk, I believe we are pouring the last segments of the sidewalk this week.
It looked pretty
They were out there
good.
pouring
Yeah.
today, and I think there's one last little panel left to do, or a couple of little panels left to do. So that portion of it will be done. We would like to do the asphalt paving, but we're going to wait till the weather's a little bit warmer. Right now, it's not a good time. We still have settlement and some of the, the consolidation of those deep trenches. So a good way to do that is just let people drive on them for a month or two, and that'll all pack in, and then we'll come in and we'll do the paving probably, we think, in April when it warms up and the batch plants are open again, and we can get the asphalt pricing. So that'll be a good thing for us. Another successful project. I think we are going to finish that one under budget. So that was good. Good work by Pat. Pat was the project manager on that one. So kudos to Pat. Also, Kimball Creek Bridge is complete. We are going to adjust the paving on that. The double dip at that one bridge is unacceptable. So we'll get that sorted out. But other than that, that bridge project is pretty successful. I'm very pleased with the way that project did. Hind again was the project manager on that and managed a difficult contractor. And we got that one completed on time and on budget. So, and kudos to Hind on that one. So
And
another
Hind
successful project.
was describing the fix for that to shave the street leading up to the bridge.
So,
is that part of the
yeah,
plan, and leading away?
yeah. So to minimize, I think the costs and impacts, we went back and the approach is 30 feet. And then when we repaved it, in order to get the grading, they made some odd adjustments that I'm not happy with. And since that, because the whole thing is built on very, very soft soil, we are experiencing some slight settlement, which we expected. But that dip is, I think, becoming more pronounced. It's not that we didn't get good compaction. We got great compaction. We had 95% all the way to the top. It's what's underneath that prism of fill that's just spongy, soft goo. And so when we dug that up, it kind of what we call exfoliates. It raises, it takes the pressure off it, and it kind of opens it. It opens it up. So after we fill it and compact it over time, it's like doing a preload. It starts to settle back down. So we're getting a little bit of a dip that's developing even more than the way we left it. And we're not happy with that. So we're going to fix that. We'll get that fixed here soon. I think it'll actually be good to kind of let it sit for a couple of months before we do the fix, just so we can kind of get to this final disposition of the roadway, and then we'll fix the paving, and we'll be good to go for 20 years. So that's it. And
Wait, we're
then,
gonna have to do this again?
oh, you know what? Those fixes, I think are good for 30 years. I think those are about 30-year fixes. They're
I feel like we
repairs.
just
They
got an
weren't
extra
full
10 years
replacements.
out of that.
Yeah, right.
Good.
Well, I'd say it's guaranteed for 20 years. And I think it's a 30-year fix, just because of the structural improvements that we made to the bridges. I think I'm confident that it's going to last us for 30 years before we get back to the state where we're worried about, the structural integrities, the things that we had before, with having to load rate them, and, there was always the possibility that there was going to be some kind of a collapse there too. Once that wood starts to rot, they're culverts. They're not like full on bridges where they're built on abutments, right? It's essentially just wood decking that's holding all the material back, right? Yeah. And it's all sitting on top of piles and grade beams. So, there's a limited lifetime on those types of culverts, but, for the price, it was a good value, because when we looked at the cost of replacing it, the repair was about a quarter to a third of the price of the full replacement. And since there was no opportunity to get funding for it, it was the best decision. Right. So, the 30-year fix will be, the best we can hope for at this point. And then 30 years or so, when we're looking at, again, hopefully it becomes a real bridge at that point, and there'll be other sources of funding available to us, or we plan for it. Yeah. Couple more real quickly. You just heard about splash pad. The water reclamation facility, phase 3. That project is nearing completion. We expect substantial completion, I think, by the end of this month. We are into testing. The actual improvements are completed, and we are into testing. We're seeding and growing the bugs in it right now, and it is operating as we had hoped, as well as the first one. So the first one it exceeded our expectations. It's performing very well. There's little challenges with these things because of the complexity. We have like mats, like sludge mats and stuff like that building up that we can fix with applying certain technologies. So we're making small adjustments, but I think that as far as the performance of the facility goes, we're very pleased with it. So we think substantial completion will be complete by the end of this month. Project will be fully complete after we get through the punch list, and I would say that'll be another month, so end of February. Good news is we've met every obligation that we had to the tribe with our agreement. We had the Fifth Amendment to the agreement with the tribe for the casino operation. And so we have fulfilled all of those obligations. So we're ready to take their wastewater when their hotel fully opens. So we're good to go there. I just wanted to give you a quick update on pending projects for next year, so you're aware of these. These are what's coming down the pipe. So we're going to have some pavement management projects. So we're going to do some paving, just particularly down here in town. We have some problem pavements that we're going to finally get to. And I won't go through each of those right now, but it's just small paving projects. Newton is particularly one that needs a lot of work, and that's going to be kind of a full rebuild with some stormwater improvements. So we're taking the opportunity while we do some of these roads to actually do stormwater improvements too. And that way we can utilize portions of our utility mains replacement fund to get that work done before we do these paving projects or in tandem with the paving projects. It helps us with the budgeting. So River Trail, we're hoping to get that started this year. Permitting, of course, is the issue there, but it looks, just based on our recent meetings, it looks like we'll be able to get started on that. We'll bid that, I think, in May. That's the hope. We'll bid it in May and get that constructed this year. It's not particularly a difficult project, but it's, one that's been a long time in coming. Sandy Cove, yes.
Is the River Trail, I just noticed today that there's a public notice sign up along 202.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that hearing is in March, early March, I think is when we're
Dr.
anticipating.
Hamlin's is fantastic, but I'm afraid we've hit our time.
Oh, we have, okay.
So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.
All
Thank
right.
you.